It's Dave here from Amplify, and I'm talking to the magical Fiona Boyes, who she's probably not only played all those guitars behind her, she probably made them with
Some of
with a balsa wood and a screwdriver and put them together and then played them and then she turned 10. No, not quite. How are you? So you've been performing for over 30 years, is that right?
yeah. I'm old enough to know better. Um, and it's interesting because I actually sort of started late. I didn't. I was a huge fan of blues music. Discovered blues in college, and I was a little bit younger than my cohort, so I was about 17. But I didn't really dig in and start to become a player myself until I was about 26.
Really? So
Yeah.
you didn't start playing till 26, or you were playing earlier and you didn't start playing professionally till 26?
No, I didn't. I really sort of started playing guitar. I decided at about in my mid to late 20s that I just was such a fan of the music that I wanted to have a go. So
But
I literally
that's
borrowed a
incredible.
guitar and
That's incredible because you're like an impresario, whatever they call it. You're a great guitarist, obviously, and I would have thought that it's almost something that has to be formed in the those neural pathways have to be formed earlier rather than later to get to that sort of the heights that you've got to.
yeah, it's strange because I mean I had played instruments when I was a kid. I came from a family that valued music, and but we did a whole lot of things. My dad was a keen sailor. We went bushwalking. I actually played clarinet when I was in the first couple of years of high school, and but yeah, guitar. I suppose because when you learn music as a kid, I could play, but I had to have music in front of me. It was very formal, and and then in the meantime, I fell in love with blues, and I just really seeped into, like, I went to as many gigs as I could. I went and saw visiting um, American artists when they were touring, and I grew up in Melbourne, so you could go out most nights of the week and see blues at
That's
that.
what I'm thinking.
The very lively blues
Back
scene.
then you could, for sure. Back then you
Yeah,
could.
yeah.
What
And
about
actually, it's
go
not bad to even, but so I fell in love with the music, and then at one point I just went, I love this so much, I want to have a go. And it was crazy in some ways because there was no women guitarists in the blues scene. I mean, there's no immediate role models in that sense.
no?
And I was quite conscious that my male peers, most of them had been playing in their garage since they were 12. So
So
at
were you
first
looking
I
at
was
Chris Cafaro or any of those guys back then?
I wasn't well. What I was mainly doing was listening to old records and going to see live bands. I mean, that was, talking the early 90s, so the internet, you didn't have access to
No, no, you
all the
didn't.
stuff. I
So,
remember actually at one point, before I was a player, um, I actually bought a season's ticket for the Melbourne Cinema Club or something. I wasn't really particularly interested in the films, but I knew that on their schedule for the year they had one night where they were doing documentary recordings of old blues artists. So on the strength of that, I bought a subscription.
oh,
You
boy.
This is stuff that you can just see, you know.
Mhm. So,
But
so,
you know,
so then, did you always want to be an artist then, or did you just take that up later?
I I've always been interested in music, as I said, as a wider palette. I actually studied graphic design, so I trained as a commercial artist, graphic designer, and I was working. And then I went uh, when I finished college. I worked in the industry for a while. And then I went traveling. My boyfriend and I at the time, we got a one-way ticket to Singapore and just decided to travel until the money ran out. And we were gone for a year. We ended up going through Asia, India, Nepal, Europe. Slept on under a lot of hedges, did
You
everything.
last longer that way. Money last
Yeah,
long.
yeah. Many. And then when I got home, I went. I actually had my last job as a commercial artist, graphic designer, was with Lonely Planet. Actually, in their early days, because they were at that stage a very small operation, and they only had one graphic designer, so I was number two, and so I think they kind of liked the idea of hiring people who had been travelers and had used their guides, and yeah, so that was my last gig before I went
Okay.
mental, had my crisis early, quit my job, borrowed a guitar, and started playing.
So what was the Mojos then?
Well, the Mojos was my first band. I started playing. Um, it was 1986, and I had just I'd started playing, and I didn't own a guitar. So my first guitar I won at a talent encouragement prize. It was a talent competition at a little coffee shop called Fat Bob's in Glen
This
Huntly.
is starting to become a Disney story.
Look, it is. Look, it's when I look back on it, yeah, it is pretty crazy. But yeah, I was deep into blues. I was loving it. I was a huge fan. I was going to see as much stuff as I could. Then at one point, I thought I want to have a go. My boyfriend had an acoustic guitar, so I started dabbling on that. I was learning by ear off old records, listening to a lot of early blues, documentary recordings from the 20s to the 40s mostly. And then I heard on public radio that they had this open mic night at a coffee shop. So I actually I borrowed a car and a guitar, didn't tell anyone.
In Melbourne?
Because I thought it was in Melbourne, but it was on the other side of town from where I lived. And I thought, if I go there, I'm safe, because if I don't tell anyone, no one will know me. It's not my part of town. So if I make a complete fool of myself, I'll be safe, So I scurried over there, I went, okay, I can't leave the guitar in the car because it's not mine. What if it gets stolen? So I had to take it in. And then they said, do you want to play? And I went, yes. So I played, somehow survived playing. And then they said, oh, well done, you've won tonight. And I went, what? And they said, oh, don't you know, we're running this thing where for the next, 8 weeks, we have an open mic and we choose one person from each night, and then we're going to have a playoff and you can win a guitar. And, well, there you go. I'm still wearing my Main. I'm now an endorsed player from Main. But so they said, come back in 3 weeks. We're having the playoff.
And that was the prize, was it a Maytime?
The prize was a Main acoustic guitar. I still have it. And that's how I got my first guitar.
That's
and so over the years, as I, now my favorite touring guitar is a Main, and I have various Mains. I'm an endorsed player. But, over the years when I would go back to get that guitar tweaked, or, I built an organic sort of relationship with them. And I often say, this was a talent encouragement prize. So basically, it's all your fault. What that to me was the pivotal thing. Then it was only like I started playing in the coffee shop. I started playing in other coffee shops.
They make good guitars. They make good guitars. Yeah. They're not Gibsons, but they make, did I say that?
I have stories about Gibson, but you probably can't publish it. But anyway.
Well, then you can't tell it, because I'm going to publish it. No one ever tells me not to publish anything. That's the worst. Okay. I'll pull it out and publish it straight. I'll ring Gibson.
No, I played the Gibson Lounge in Memphis. Anyway, that's later on the piece. But
we'll have another interview. I'm going to do a conscious sort of podcast coming up where I sort of get into people's, inside rather than their outside sort of thing. So we can talk about it then.
Oh, cool.
All right. Yeah. Keep going. Yeah. Sorry. The Gibson.
So then I had the so I finally had a guitar. I was playing out, and it was really about that stage. I'd only been playing in public for about 18 months when I had the opportunity to join or be part of forming the Mojos, which was an all-female blues band. We pretty groundbreaking
then.
Oh, well, yeah, yeah, it was. We pretty much had dibs on all the female players, and how that came about was that we knew each other. Apart from the drummer, we knew each other from going to see blues bands, and the piano player Gina Woods, the harmonica player Kaz De La Rosa, and myself were all blues fans. And then one night at a party where there was a live blues band, we realised that we all had fledgling ability on different instruments, and we decided to get together and form a band. The first time we played without a drummer, but it turned out that the little coffee shop where I'd won the guitar, the waitress was a drummer, and she actually came more from a pop and rock scene. But so the female drummer found us. So yeah, for the next 15 years or whatever, it was an important outfit, and it was very it sort of ran as a collective in some ways, but it was also a very supportive way, a very supportive framework to learn our craft.
You didn't open a venue in Fremantle with your earnings, did you?
No, we pretty much we're in Melbourne.
I'm saying Mojo's is over there.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. But see, the thing is, with having an all-female band, is we did have maternity leave, because there was various babies born, and so we didn't tour much because there was a lot. And in those days, you just got 3 residencies a week, and and played. So we played a lot.
All right. How would you describe your sound? They call you a finger-picking firebrand. How would you describe your sound, you yourself?
Firebrand. Woo! I sound zingy, don't I? I think my sound is quite diverse across a body of work. I've released 13 albums or something, and they range from my early preoccupations were with a lot of finger-picking acoustic country blues, very influenced by Melbourne's own godfather of the blues, Dutch Tilders, who used to play a lot of Big Bill Broonzy. And so Big Bill Broonzy, Mississippi John Hurt, Tommy Johnson, that kind of finger-picking. Then with the Mojos, well, for starters, I've never played electric guitar. So your role as a guitarist when you're playing country blues is, there's your bass player, there's your rhythm player. You're trying to do bass lines and fill and melody with one instrument. And that kind of doesn't make sense when you suddenly find yourself needing to play straight rhythm and straight single note solos. So that took a while to
navigate,
to get my head. But in the meantime, I started songwriting, and I had a band with a good harmonica player and a good piano player. So we focused then more on music that was more honky-tonk blues, swing blues, a lot of New Orleans stuff, because it was melodic, great rhythms, and great for piano.
Were you writing before the Mojos or just playing?
I was just playing. So the Mojos was really it's a very supportive environment, and we encouraged each other to explore. So songwriting was part of that. And I became the main songwriter for that outfit. So, when you say my sound, it's acoustic, but then there's the band stuff. And then in recent years, with repeat trips to Memphis and to Mississippi, particularly Clarksdale and Como, I've been really delving into early Chicago blues in Mississippi. So then you get all the cigar boxes and the slide. So very swampy, very roots-based. I've also delved into a bit of rockabilly and zydeco. So what I love is the idea of all these regional blues, that blues is a much wider genre than most people give it credit for. And if there's any thread, which I think there is, that joins all my explorations into these different regional styles, everything is very roots-based. My sound is very much goes back to the traditions. And I think if you're writing in a traditional genre, which blues is, for me, the interesting thing is that you want to have guidelines that indicate that you are within the genre, but you want to bring something of yourself to it. So you have this dynamic tension between respectful of the tradition while finding your own voice within it and being, in some ways, carrying it forward. So I think my sound is roots-based, but my own voice within the tradition.
So who are the influences? Who are the artists that you were sort of following through that process? Like, most of us we've got artists we like, we listen to, but then we've got artists we're sort of trying to, because you're developing a craft, aren't you? You're developing you as a product. So you're working out what you're going to do. And so you look at other people to sort of get some ideas about what they're doing and introducing it. So who are influencing you back then, or in your career?
In the very beginning, artists that I mentioned, like Big Bill Broonzy, Mississippi John Hurt, Dutch Tildes, then going into the Mojos, especially as an electric guitarist, I didn't really get blues rock or I couldn't really. I've never been a shredder. I've never tried to do that, but I think the elegant phrasing of someone like T-Bone Walker suddenly made sense to me then. But then when I had a chance to go to Memphis, fast forward to 2003, I won the local playoffs at my blues society in Melbourne and was sent to Memphis to represent Melbourne at the International Blues Challenge in Memphis. And that is a competition that's international, and it's held on all of the venues along historic Beale Street in
You've
Memphis.
won that a few times, haven't you?
Sorry?
Haven't you won that?
Yeah. Well, the competition itself is, you win that and then you're done and dusted. But then after that, I started getting nominations in the American Blues Music Awards, which both those things are run by the American Blues Foundation, which really is the peak body for blues in the world. But the International Blues Challenge was the beginning, and it was my first trip to America. So I'm suddenly playing on Beale Street, going, because, by the time I became a player, I really wanted to go to America, to the home of the blues. But by then I was a musician, so I was broke. So luckily, by representing Melbourne, they sponsored me and bought me a ticket. So now I find myself in Memphis, in Beale Street, in this very historic place where all my heroes would have played back in the day. And I'm thinking now of people who also influenced me, like Memphis Minnie. Now, Memphis Minnie was the woman guitar player of her generation in the 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
Very innovative guitarist. And I remember, and I'd written a song as part of my competition set, which was a tribute to Memphis Minnie. And I remember sitting there going, she played here. She would have played here. It was hugely exciting. So I don't know how I got into Memphis. So easy to get.
No, you were doing the performance.
Influences.
Influences.
Yeah, influences.
And just talking about Tennessee, I spent some time in Knoxville, and people in Tennessee love Tennessee. They're very parochial.
Yeah. And people in Memphis. Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure they can afford to be these days. It's a different America, but certainly, for most of the time it has been. Yeah, the Toms, I think they are the football side, something like that, or
people, they're boosters for their town. They wear all the merch.
They do.
So, but once I got to Memphis, then I had an opportunity to sit in and. While I was at the competition, I ended up winning. So I was the first woman and the first non-American to do that. So that confused everybody. I went there just going, I'm just going to be myself. I'm thrilled to be here. I don't know if the Americans will get what I'm doing. I don't know if they'll understand. A lot of my original songs had stories attached to them. I don't know if they're going to get my accent, my stories, anyway, I ended up winning, and it was pivotal. It was mind-blowing, and it meant then that I got invitations back to then play at the WC Handy Awards, to open to be the performer at the Blues Hall of Fame induction dinner that year. I went back and did a 3-month tour, played 72 dates. Like, huge things happened. But that connection led me to meet a lot of my heroes, a lot of my blues heroes, and play with them and tour with them, record with them in some cases. And that led me directly to Chicago blues, which I'd always thought was a little bit too masculine and muscular for me to tackle. But with the encouragement of people like Bob Margolin, who was a long-time guitarist with Muddy Waters, and Hubert Sumlin, who was Howling Wolf's seminal guitar player, the guy that Keith Richards said, that's the guy, who changed a lot of electric guitar playing, in his, he was very influential. So meeting and hanging out and playing with these people who are my blues heroes was not only an incredible experience as a fan, but for my personal and musical development, particularly for someone who is very interested in the traditions and the history of the music.
What do you think of Tom Hanks' movie when he was caught there in the airport and he'd come out to get the signature of that blues player? Did you remember that movie? When he was when he was the foreigner and he was caught in the airport and he couldn't get out. He couldn't get to get out.
Yeah.
And he was stuck in the airport. But he was going there because he had this can or something or other of all the signatures of these blues artists that his dad had.
Yeah.
And there was one that he didn't have, and he was playing there, and all he wanted to do was go to the place where he was playing and get his signature. I thought that was, the movie was around time and, having a fight with the airport manager. Boom, 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 boom.
There's a lot of fighting in airports in America, I find.
That's for true. So what new music's coming out? What new music have you got to come out?
Oh, I'm so glad you're asking, because I always have a lot of projects on the go. I've written an album's worth of party songs, which I'm waiting to record next year. In the meantime, I have recorded an album revisiting my fingerpicking, which I'm just put on the back burner for a minute because the new release will be coming out in 1st of October on vinyl and digital, but it's a legacy release. It's a historic release. I've done a lot of moving over the years. At one point, I had lived in 10 houses in 8 years in 2 different countries. So I've rolled with wherever the opportunities have come. And, I lived for a couple of years in the States. So obviously, since then, the statistics have gone up.
I think we're transient, at our base. Consciously, we're just transient, beings. If you can live in the moment, just make the most of wherever you are and whatever's taking place. So I think I think moving's a great thing. I don't think it's a problem at all. I think it's probably healthy rather than unhealthy. Okay, so those moves?
Yeah, well, all the moves have been for various reasons, and they've all led to different opportunities. But last October, I actually moved for the first time into my own place. I finally have a base and a place of my own. And obviously there've been a lot of boxes that have been dragged around or in storage. And I discovered a box, and in the box was, what's in here? A mini disc player. And in the mini disc was turned out to be a recording, a desk recording from Byron Bay Blues Fest in 2004, where I put together my first iteration of my touring band. After the Mojos, I formed the Fortune Tellers. So my original drummer, a double bass player, Dean Addison, Chris Wilson on harmonica, and vocals, and Hubert Sumlin, Howling Wolf's guitarist. And we were touring that outfit, and we had 2 shows at Byron Bay. This is essentially the show that we did on the Saturday, and it was such an incredible. I remember, playing with Hubert and Chris, and I remember it as being a magical show. But of course, here now I have, this is what it is. So I was almost scared to listen to it in case it didn't measure up to the magic of my memory, but it did.
Haname.
I got it digitized. I've got it beautifully mastered for vinyl, and I've written extensive liner notes on some important reflections on Hubert Sumlin. I actually went and spent a weekend with him in his home. So there's a reflection about Hubert. There's extensive liner notes about putting the band together, how the tour came about, because in fact Bob Margolin was supposed to be doing that tour, and he had a scheduling conflict at the last minute and couldn't come. And they said, would you consider taking Hubert? And I'm thinking, Howling Wolf's guitarist? Are you kidding? So there's lots of notes about that. A lovely reflection from Peter Noble from Blues Fest.
Actually, what do you think about Blues Fest potentially closing down?
Well, look, I think, Peter's been in the business for a very long time, and I think I was quite prepared to think it was going to be the last one, because
He was positioning.
Well, I think also you have to consider, when you are running a festival of any magnitude, but particularly one of that magnitude, there's still a lot of risk involved. Promoters are a particular breed of people that, there's always the possibility that you lose the house and the shirt off your back. And I wondered if after all these years, maybe he'd lost his appetite for that. But I also think it's an exercise in reminding people of what they've got and what they've got to lose if they lose it.
It's such a unique thing, because it's not one venue, 2 nights, and bang 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 sort of thing, and you just make sure that you've got 500 people sitting in the seats and you've made a return. It's a unique sort of event.
Well, it is, and I mean, I think that even speaks to the fact that this new album I'm about to release, it's from 2004, but it also speaks to the fact that Blues Fest has, and Peter addresses this in his liner notes, that over the years it's been a platform. It's been one of the few festivals with the buying power to bring some very big names. 2004, James Brown was one of the headliners. So you have a festival with the buying power to bring in these great American artists. It gives Australian artists a chance to stand alongside those people and reach different audiences. And in many cases, like this particular album, Live at Blues Fest 2004, with myself and my band, The Fortune Tellers, you have the collaboration of important international artists with local Australian artists. And, I think that over the years has been a really important thing for the Australian blues scene, for the Australian roots music scene.
Sure.
The music scene, I think it is and remains an important event.
Talking about events, you've got BB King's 100th birthday and some Memphis 3 concerts. Talk a bit about that.
Yeah, I'm really excited about BB King's 100th birthday. It's 16th of September. Also happens to be my mother's birthday. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity to focus on BB King, who of course got his start in Memphis and on Beale Street, that historic place, because that so many people got their start on Beale Street, and as I said, a very historic place for the blues. But I think BB King in particular has a really interesting role in bringing blues music to a wider audience, because I think at its heart, blues is good, earthy, human music. It's music that speaks to people, and deals with good, human concerns. And so I love the idea that, and Bieber was a very elegant player, and a very gracious person. So it's wonderful to have the opportunity to celebrate him, and also to celebrate Memphis. And it's funny that it just happens to be when we're about to do a run of gigs with the Memphis Three. Over all the years that this International Blues Challenge has been happening, the three sort of non-North American winners of the solo duo section of the competition have been Australians. So myself in 2003, Jimmy Hocking a couple of years later, and then a couple of years ago, Frank Sultana from the Sydney Blues Society. So because we're all mates, and I think the blues scene is quite a community, and we thought, it'd be really fun to get together, do some tour dates, and we did some earlier in the year, and it was really, really fun. So it's like a Songwriters in the Round, we get together. Frank has a very swampy sound. I can play across, electric guitar, baritone, and cigar boxes. Jimmy is an incredible raconteur and storyteller, also plays great mandolin, which he doesn't often get a chance to these days, as well as guitar. And we get a chance to lead songs, play on each other's materials, and tell outrageous road stories about Memphis and touring.
If you could perform with any music artist, alive or dead, who would you choose?
Oh, look, you know what? This is so hard because there's so many. I would love to play with Hubert Sumlin again. I think that is as much about his playing as him as a person, because he's an incredible gentleman and a very sweet person. He's very encouraging to me, which was important. And if I was going to extend that, I'd have to have a shout out to some of the women who've been, I think, underrepresented. So Memphis Minnie, Jessie Mae Hemphill from Como, Mississippi Hills player, and I reckon I could jam with those two. Sister Rosetta Tharpe might give me a run for my money. Let's put together a band with those women.
Yeah, I think that's Do you still have, there you go, that's a long-term aspiration. Do you still have long-term aspirations being such a youngster?
Oh, so you haven't. That's one of the things I love about blues, because it is a tradition, and I think the way I always viewed it was the idea that younger players sit at the knee of older players and are respectful of their music, and with the understanding that your life experience brings something to the music as well as sheer flat facility on your instrument. There's something about that which you bring to your music, and it's an historic torch that goes from one generation to the next.
It's a bit like, isn't it a bit like, I always find it a bit like meditation, right? So you live your life and you think you're going through life and you're doing everything a particular way, and then you have this relationship with meditation where over years you become someone who understands meditation, not from the concept, but from the actual experience. And then everything that you do after that is sort of meditative, because instead of spending a second with it, you spend 2 seconds with it or something like that. So you have a completely different experience. And so I would think performing, you'd think that you've got your craft and your down pat and all that sort of stuff, but there's a difference between having a performance that your body's in as distinct from your mind's in, or your thought, you're sort of doing something, some sort of road situation. So I would see performance, not that I've been a performer, but I would see performance at an older age being another, renaissance sort of thing. It's sort of a whole new sort of situation.
I think any musician that's fair to him about what they're doing would say it's always it's a process, and it's the doing of it, and I certainly think that I feel there's always more to learn. I'm astonished when people go, "Oh, isn't blues a bit narrow and derivative or something?" No, but I'm finding still all these things, and I see that in the older players that, you know, it's sometimes it's what you don't play, it's the spaces. There's always, you know, you can only play with as much feel as you've got right now, but there's always more to dig into. And as I said, you know, I have this project which is due for release on the 1st of October. I have another album essentially in the can, which, you know, goes back to my early finger picking, because my recent albums have been much more focused on Mississippi and Chicago sounds. And I wanted to find out, if I went back to my ragtime stuff and wrote some more material or revisited some of that, what would I bring to it now that wasn't happening then? So I've got an album which will probably come out next year, which is about that. And then I have an album of party songs which are just fun, which I'd like to do with a bigger ensemble with horns. And so, you know,
the audience has plenty to devour in the coming year or two.
Yeah, when you say long-term aspirations, I think, you know, when I first got started, my aspiration was to get to the next gig, do my very best for an audience always, and improve my musicianship. And, you know, X decades later, I would say that's still my aspiration.
Sure.
Yeah. And if you're crazy enough to be a musician, particularly when you're playing non-mainstream music and original music, I think, you know, I'd certainly say to anyone starting out, if you have to have a passion for it. It has to feel vocational.
Yeah, you've got to provide a unique offer, and you've got to, in my view, you've got to provide a unique offer, and you've got to perform as often as you can perform anywhere for anybody, because you've got to have a passion for the actual in the moment sort of experience. Because if you do that,
yeah, it is.
Then you'll perform for 20 people the same as you perform for 2,000, and you know that's all part of it. You know, what you're
doing. That's certainly how I feel about it. And when you are in the moment, and it's like an energy exchange with the audience, and I think it's a very different mindset. You know, for me, at the heart of it, blues is communal music, right from, you know, I've actually played some of the old juke joints like Red's Juke Joint in Clarksdale, Mississippi, which is, you know, for a gal from Melbourne, Australia, to be playing in those, you know, deeply local places and be accepted. And it was a great thrill for me, but also an honour. You know, I actually got given the keys to the city of Clarksdale. And you know, it's amazing. But those
do they get you into anywhere?
Sorry?
Do they get you into anywhere?
No, it's more an honorary arrangement, but it was a huge thrill, and it was the mayor presented it to me at a little reception.
Fully deserving, but, I'm sure.
You know, when people say, you know, what's the highlight? You know, sometimes you can have gigs which are fantastic. You know, I've played some very big festivals. I played in 20 countries, you know, over the years, and some of those festivals have been huge. But then, yeah, playing for Red Payden Duke Runner in his Duke with, you know, 30 diehard locals who are serious, you know, like, and because if they don't like you, you'll know. Those gigs are real honours, badge of honour gigs, you know. Yeah.
All right, let's finish with some quick fire questions. You ready for these? People hate all these most of the time, but that's good.
Yeah. Okay, go.
What's the craziest thing you've ever done? A lot of times artists don't answer this.
I don't think I've ever done anything crazy. I think it's all been part of following my passion. But I'm just going to say, I quit my job, borrowed a guitar I couldn't play, and joined a band.
I think that's
don't regret.
Probably the most sensible thing you ever did. What's the one topic you can talk about for hours?
This one, we're doing fine.
Music. What's the thing you like most about yourself?
I think I'm a people person.
Yeah. What does that, when you say you're a people person, like I think I'm a conscious guy in my old age. and like a
Yeah.
people person is, for me, it's like there's a certain you're in the moment, and from
Mm.
that perspective, you're collaborating with everything that's taking place, whether it's the dirt or the wall or a person. But if you're
Yeah.
collaborating with the person, you're sitting down there and you're actually listening to what's taking place, and you're having an exchange that's an in the moment
Yeah.
exchange. It's not a thought about what are you gonna do with this interview, where's it gonna go, and all this sort of stuff. You might have a thought about making sure you raise different points and all that, but that so you're saying a people person from the perspective that you like to listen and respond,
Yeah.
or just like to
I
talk and respond?
I um I care about the people around me. Um and do my best for an audience. And I think that's
I think that eventually it does. If you survive in this game, you've got to have
mm,
some sort of a feeling for the audience because the audience will pick it
yeah.
up, and you won't survive
But
if
also,
you're just commercial.
when people are snooty or self-absorbed, I always think, well, you really only get to be a performing musician by the good graces of people who come to the gig.
Yeah.
Otherwise you're playing in a studio or you're playing in your bedroom.
Yeah.
So why not be respectful? Maybe if I said, what do I like most about myself is that I try and be a respectful person in
Yeah.
respect in
You've
respect
got,
to my fellow human.
you've got a right to some ego, but you don't try and display it. You try and be just normal all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah, they you by the good graces of people who play the music on the radio, the venues who manage to keep going and operate, the promoters that hire you for a festival, the
Yeah.
audience that turns up,
Yes.
they're the people that make it possible for
We're
you to
all
be a
together.
performing.
All right,
Yeah.
here we go. Here we go. The favourites. These are what we'll finish with. Your favourites, and they can be all time or they can be right today. Favourite album.
Mm. Too many to start with, but I'll go Wicked Grim with John Hammond playing Tom Waits,
Yeah.
and going back to New Orleans with Dr. John. Anything by Muddy Waters and Howling Wolf.
Yes.
There you
Favourite artist.
go. Sorry?
Favourite artist.
Favourite artist.
Music artist.
There you go. You almost got me. I was about to say Reg Bombassa.
No, I'm talking to Reg on Tuesday.
Hey?
I'm talking to Reg on Tuesday.
Are you? I love Reg.
Reg
Yeah,
and John with Dog Trumpet.
yeah. Favorite artist. There's too many. It's a ridiculous question.
It's a ridiculous.
Sorry.
That's why I asked it. It's a ridiculous.
There's too many.
But no matter what I ask you, there's always too many answers.
Yeah.
You
I'm
can give
sorry.
too many
That is the
answers to
nature.
any question I give you. So the fact that you say
Yeah.
there's too many artists is more that you appreciate too many of them to separate one. It's like kids' favorite child. I'm not going to accept that.
Yeah.
Favorite movie.
Actually, I've never been like, I watch movies, but I'm not sort of deep into it.
Really? You can't get deep into a movie. Like The Sound of
Well, yeah,
Music
I
in the
do,
60s.
but
Right,
and
when the love story between the captain and Maria, how do you solve a problem like Maria? You can't get into that?
I've really enjoyed Quentin Tarantino. It took me a while to
Yeah, he's
sneak up
fantastic.
on, and I've enjoyed a lot, Jane Campion's work. I've enjoyed a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
I'd say as far as an album, the one movie I've seen a lot of times, I will say, is Spinal Tap. And that's because at one point I was mentoring a group of at-risk youth, and I was doing a program where we were trying to get kids into the music scene and ready for different things. So I would have sessions where I talked about getting a band together, and I have sessions about musicianship or preparing for a gig, or how to give yourself. And then when we'd had all these different sessions, I'd play them that movie and then go, watch which bits can you identify where they from our sessions where things went wrong. It was hilarious. But anyway,
It is a funny movie. Favorite place to visit?
Sorry, I didn't catch that. Favorite?
Favorite place to visit?
Oh, look, let's go Memphis because we've been on about Memphis, and I think I really,
Yes.
yeah. I
Do you
love
feel
Memphis,
anything
and
when you go out to Elvis's ranch? Do you feel anything? Does anything come through?
the places I feel is I go back to some places that have particular memories for me. I always go to the Blues Foundation, see what's happening there, and they've been building the Blues Hall of Fame, which is fantastic. The Civil Rights Museum, very moving. But for me personally, places like the Pig on Beale, which was the little club that I first played in, and I've met musicians there, which went on to make albums that won awards. Rum Boogie Cafe, there's up in the rafters of Rum
Yeah,
Boogie,
yeah.
there's guitars signed. I have a signed guitar up in Rum Boogie.
Have you been out this,
Um,
have you been there this year? Have you been to the States this year?
no, I haven't been. I've only had one quick trip since COVID, since the plague, and I didn't make it to Memphis. I was actually went to play a
It'll,
private event in
it'll
San
be
Diego. So
it'll be interesting to see what you think about Memphis or the America under King Don. King Don.
I think, well, I get reports from various friends. Of course, I've made a lot of friends, and yeah, I think it's a difficult situation right now. That's for sure.
Very difficult
Yeah.
situation for, and not only that, I was saying in the last interview I had just before that I can't get my head around the USAID stuff, where 200,000 or 300,000 Africans are dying every month because they've
Mm,
cut off aid. And I just can't get my
mm,
head around like an American
mm,
population that can come to terms with that, even that just one thing that occurs that they probably don't know is occurring, but that occurs
mm,
is just intolerable. It's just something
mm.
that's like we can do a Michael we can do a song with Quincy about or with Buggerlugs in England about
Yeah,
aid, live aid, and all this sort of stuff, and it can
yeah,
motivate everyone, and that was to
yeah.
try and deal with, famine. But we can let
Mm.
Gaza exist, or we can let this thing exist, and we sort of just turn our heads away from it, and it's baffling to me. I just cannot understand it. But
Yeah,
how
there's a
we,
lot of things that are a bit baffling. Well, for starters, the United States of America, it's very interesting because different, you know, having spent a lot of time in Mississippi and Louisiana, kind of those like those southern states are really different from being in New York, very different from the Midwest, very different from the Pacific Northwest. I also had a base in and lived for a while in Portland, Oregon, and they are like different countries.
well,
Yeah,
Oregon's a bit different though, because in fact, that drive from San Francisco up to Oregon is probably the best drive in the world. That
mm,
I don't know if you've driven it or you just flew it, but
yeah,
if you ever get the chance to drive it, it's just
yeah,
absolutely magnificent. But you've got service stations every 10 kilometers, which is a bit different to Europe. So you get
yeah,
you get the benefit, and it's just magnificent.
yeah,
Snow capped mountains, and just brilliant.
yeah, yeah. Beautiful coming into the Cascades and stuff in Oregon. It's lovely.
It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
as I said, I have a lot of friends there too, and so that's a great music scene in the Pacific Northwest. And, that's what they said. They said if you're going to live in a place where it rains that much, you have to be good at indoor sports like music.
Yeah, yeah. Favorite venue to play?
Ah, okay. I'm gonna go Reds Duke Joint because that's got a particular spot in my heart. But there again, that does a disservice to all the fantastic venues that exist. And sometimes the smaller ones, it's like the small ones and Blues Fest. I mean,
I've told
man,
you.
you're killing me with these questions.
I know I am. That's what I do. I love killing people in a different way. I've spoken to arena artists, and I'll say,
Mm,
favorite venue, and some of them, especially in America, some of them will say, I was traveling from blah blah to blah blah, and we stopped at one place, and there were 25 people there, and it was,
yeah,
we played in a bar, there just for fun, sort of thing. And he says
Yeah.
that's the best time I've ever, felt playing. And they've played
Mm,
like major arenas to tens of thousands of people and all this sort of stuff. And it's like at its heart, a muso is a muso. You know,
yeah.
it's not
But
about.
also some playing the little venues, and I think that's what's great. I mean, I've played some great house parties, and there's a huge excitement about playing a big venue with a huge audience and everything that goes with that. But and particularly in Europe, the Europeans know how to really do hospitality. In fact, okay, I'm going to say Cognac Blues Festival because that was fantastic, and they give you a bottle of cognac to every performer. But sometimes there's that, which is very exciting and looks good and great, and it is very exciting. But when you play some of these small venues and you're actually playing for people and they're right there, there is that real chance to connect with people and chat with them. And in some ways you have to work harder because you can't just put energy out there. You actually have to be respectful and play for these people right here. And
Have you played
sometimes,
in South
particularly if there's
America?
no, I haven't played in South America. No, I've played. The closest I've got is playing the legendary Rhythm and Blues Cruise, where we had a port of call in Mexico. Did we play there? I can't remember.
I just think there's so many because I see all around the world, and I know Jack Pearson, mate. He says they go over and play before thousands in Europe and all this sort of stuff, and then you see the heavy guys in Europe and up, real north and all this sort of gear. But there's a South American movement that we don't even know about, and they've got like 20, 50, 100 million followers. Major
Yeah,
we don't even hear of over here. It's just a
yeah,
massive music sort of.
yeah. I know a few blues musicians who've gone down there and done very well in different South American countries, but I'd love to do that. That sounds great. It's not,
It's
it's
still
some
there for you.
place.
They're
Yeah,
waiting.
yeah.
They're waiting. They're
Yeah.
waiting. Favorite
Ready.
food?
Favorite food? Oh, I'll go seafood.
There you go. Yeah, I do the
Oysters, prawns.
same.
I live in Yamba at the moment. Well, sorry, in McLean, so I'm on the Mighty Clarence. Prawns are the go.
Fantastic. King prawns, I would think. Favorite
Yeah.
drink?
Okay, I'm going to go champagne and cognac because um, touring in France, that was actually the first place I played in Europe, and one of the nicest festivals was playing at Cognac Blues Festival. Beautiful, beautiful grounds.
Best cognac in relation to Paris.
South of Paris, not that far, and that region of Cognac, but the town of Cognac, they are so very proud of their namesake product
Yeah.
that the foundational families that so Hennessy, Martel, they have hospitality tents. And when you play your gig at the festival, then afterwards, one of their representatives will come and lead you to their hospitality tent and fete you and give you drinks and present you with a bottle of their cognac as part of their thank you for playing at the festival.
France
And so
fantastic. Country France is fantastic.
I discovered I loved cognac, and now I have developed a palate in excess of my wallet. But it's
Well, that's right. It's not cheap. It's not cheap. But they have, you would have seen when you were there that they've got cathedrals in, little towns where, the rich farmer has died and left all his money to the church and they've got nothing to do with it. So they build a cathedral the size of a
yeah.
city cathedral for their 100 people or whatever. And you're driving through, checking out, country France, and you say, what is this? It's like the
Well,
maintenance.
I was literally driving, and I said to Alain, who was my promoter and driver, I said, "What's that?" I said, "That looks like Chartres Cathedral." And he went, "Oh yeah, it's a church." And I went, can I stop? Can I walk the famous labyrinth? Can I look at?"
They've actually got in Nevers, they've got one of the three girls from Lourdes. She
Mm,
died there as in a convent or whatever, and they've got her body with a thin film
Yeah.
of wax, and it's on display, and it hasn't
Yeah.
decomposed or anything like that. It's, she's been dead for
Yeah.
50 years or 100, whatever it is, 60, 80 years or whatever. So
Yeah.
it's amazing stuff. I was a not a big fan of Paris itself, but I was a big fan of country. Okay, well, favorite person in history apart from me.
Apart from you. Uh, uh,
Is there, there's somebody that sticks in your craw that you'll tell people about that inspired you to, or it could be mum, could be
I'm going-
Mandela, could be Joan of Arc, could be
oh, my
Maria from
mother.
The Sound of Music.
Oh, look, my mother, yeah, well, she was a bloody remarkable woman. Look, I'm going to go back to Hubert for the minute because I've been deeply focused on Hubert
I tell you
Songwriter at
what,
the
man,
moment.
I think you got to write a book
Yeah.
about him because he's obviously he's made an impact.
Oh, he made a huge impact on me, actually. He really did. Yeah. Yeah.
Lots other
My,
people need to find
this
out
is the
about
first
him.
time knows if I'm getting to sleep on this, David. I'm just
All right, and this is the final question. The tattoo.
a tattoo. Okay, I'm a clean skin, so I'm one of the rarities in this modern world, and there's a reason for that. I think a Gemini with very quick thinking and lots of shifting passions, I can't imagine inking something on myself that would make
Permanent.
sense tomorrow. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. So I admire other people's tattoos, and I'm fascinated with why people get them. But the the tattoo that I would get would be invisible. I don't see myself ever getting one. There you go.
There you go. Well, I think that's well, Fiona Boyes, that's an interview. Now, usually I'm doing 15 or 20 minutes with people. I think we've done an hour, so you can decide to do whatever you want to do with it. I thought it was a good piece. We found out a lot about you during this past hour.
Yeah, good
So
on.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, man. But it's not exactly the website piece will probably be more, it'll have those little, what you're doing and what music and all that sort of stuff. This is more a discovery piece for fans to sort of find out a bit more about.
Yeah,
I think it's important for fans to find the music through the artist rather than find the artist through
mm,
myself because there's so much about an artist that you just don't know about, and you hear the
mm,
music and you think you know something about them. Like look at Glenn Campbell. He's probably one of the best
mm.
guitarists that ever picked up a guitar,
Yeah,
and him and
yeah,
him and Alice Cooper were best mates for 40 years. And Alice reckons he's
yeah,
the best guitarist he ever came across. And so you'd never think that to
yeah,
think of, Galveston or whatever. But, so you
yeah,
find out this
yeah,
stuff about people and it's really interesting if you go searching. And I'm sure the guy that you were speaking about a number of times is probably
yeah,
someone like that. If you went down there and you sort of investigated, you'd probably find his music as a result of finding
yeah,
him, and that might be a
yeah.
better way to sort of find people, I think. So
Well, yeah, I think certainly from Hubert's point of view, he's best known with his work with Howling Wolf. And Howling Wolf is there's the two foundational musicians in Chicago blues from the 50s, 60s, and that's Muddy Waters and Howling Wolf. But I think it's because I had a chance to hang out with Hubert and tour with him and play with him, and so I heard a lot of stories that you don't,
you
of
won't get
of what it was like to be a black band, touring and their experiences and being on the road and a lot of road stories.
I
Which
thought
I
I
mean,
thought
every musician has stories, but that so I think that was really was very impressed me
I
a
thought
lot.
that when you said you won the competition over there in Memphis, I thought when you were
Mm,
saying you're female and Australian, that was very
mm,
surprising. I thought to myself, just imagine if she was black as well. Gee whiz, that would have been fantastic. You know, if you're
Well, yeah, I
ridiculous,
think it's,
because I'm not
yeah,
sure
I
that
don't, yeah, it was, yeah, I wasn't, as I said, I wasn't sure what they would make of me. So I've been um, very humbled that I was really embraced by
it's great.
the school players, by all the players that I really respected. You know, when I played at the Blues Hall of Fame induction dinner, that was to induct Pinetop Perkins into the Blues Hall of Fame. Now he recorded on one of my albums. He played with Muddy Waters and everybody, but Pinetop, he won the Grammy for Best Traditional Blues Artist the year he died, just before he died. He died just shy of his 96th birthday. He was still touring. You know, he recorded with me when he was in his late 90s.
See,
And
that to me is,
I wrote a song for him, which was called Old Time Ways, which was just all blues metaphors for sex,
I think,
because he was a real ladies fan. You know, it was great.
but I think that that's the point. This is where music elevates to religion, sort of thing, because it's more than
Mm,
just listening to music. That's great, but basically,
mm,
these people, it's like a religion. If there is such a thing as a
yeah,
religion, well, then music and these people are definitely,
yeah,
they're
yeah.
bigger.
And this is what you miss. Yeah, and this is what you miss, I think, which is a bit of a shame. But that's why I love physical albums, and I like lots of liner notes. I like context. I like to read the stories behind the songs. I like gigs where people tell me a bit about what they're doing, because, and this is what you're missing when you're streaming and you're just getting one song here, one song there. You don't get the album as a body of work. You don't get taken from here to there as a journey. You don't get to read who's playing what and what instrument. Because some
And I
of
think
my
that's why we live in a podcast age. Because even though the
mm,
stories aren't necessarily important, they're
yeah,
authentic a lot. They're unique.
yeah,
They're interesting from that sort of perspective. And
yeah.
consciously we yearn for that sort of connection.
Mm. Because the last release I did was essentially a duo album with my longtime drummer Mark Grundon, called Ramplified, and he's a really inventive hand percussionist as well as a kit drummer. So there's things where there's, you know, 4-string cigar box, 3-string cigar box, but the percussion might be like vintage chains, horseshoes, um, rubbish tin lids hit with orchestral mallets. You know, there's funky things. And so I list all the instruments on the liner notes, because I think, well, listen to this. This is kind of, he's creating a sonic soundscape here. Isn't it interesting to know what he's playing, you know?
Namaste. Enjoy yourself. Thank you for the chat.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
good luck. You've got a lot of stuff coming up. We look forward to
I
hearing
have.
it all when it comes out, and
Yeah,
hearing more about the boys in the future.
yeah, good on you. Thank you so much, Dave.
No
Thanks for
worries,
your time.
man. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Cheers.
I'll talk to you again soon. All the
Okay,
best.
mate.
Bye bye.
Bye.